Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here, and I've got a video response for the Young Turks. I watched like 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and it was already pure gold. So I haven't watched the whole thing. I kind of wanted to try a live response video, so let's see how this goes. But the title is Professor Fired for Otto Warmbier Comments. You can only imagine how this is going to go. And then, as typical Young Turks fashion, it's always going to be worse than you expected. It almost always is. So let's see if that holds true today.
An adjunct professor will not be rehired for the next semester due to her comments about Otto Warmbier, the 22-year-old man who unfortunately was detained during his trip in North Korea, came back to the United States with a...
Okay, first of all, that's kind of misleading. Yes, he went on a trip to North Korea, technically. He actually went from the United States to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is where he was staying. And then in Hong Kong, he decided to take a tour into North Korea. I think it was like 5 days or something. He wasn't even in North Korea very long, okay? So it's not like he was in the United States and then just decided to go to North Korea. So, I mean, I think that gets lost sometimes.
He was unconscious, in a coma, and then unfortunately later died. Now, this...
Yeah, and he was in a coma for a fucking year. A year. You don't mention that, of course.
Professor from the University of Delaware said some pretty unfortunate things about him.
Unfortunate? Unfortunate. That's how we're going to phrase this. That these comments were unfortunate.
Give you her comments. She wrote on her personal Facebook page that former detainee Otto Warmbier was, quote, typical of a mindset of a lot of young, white, rich, clueless males who come into my classes.
Okay, I wouldn't get hung up on the word unfortunate that much because I don't like to pick words apart. But when the Young Turks has such a history of hating on white males and, defending minorities pretty much no matter what. And here, can you imagine if a black person or Latino person or some other race other than white was the victim here? They wouldn't be using the word if this professor was white. They wouldn't be using the term unfortunate. They're more calculated than that, at least. So it's just a little, the word that I used was despicable. There are so many words that fit better than unfortunate.
She added that Warmbier got exactly what he deserved. Now, keep in mind, he traveled to North Korea. He had taken down some sort of banner in the hotel that he was staying in. It was a propaganda.
Yeah, they call it propaganda banner as a political banner. A political sign, basically.
The banner. He later put it back up, but it didn't matter. At that point, they had decided to detain him as he was going to the airport to fly back to the United States. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. We don't know exactly what they did to him and why he was in a coma when he arrived back to the United States, but he died as a result of whatever.
Well, we don't know exactly why. Like, this actually isn't all that false. She's not exactly going into detail on some of this. Like, it's not like we have no idea what happened. And part of the reason there is confusion is because North Korea has a completely different story from what American officials have said. Most people would believe the Americans over the North Koreans, but like, if you want to look for facts and stuff, we don't have all the facts yet, but North Korea is probably lying about a lot of it. They said that they were giving him sleeping pills to help him sleep. Do you really believe that? And that he got botulism from that because it was tainted, and then that put him in a coma for a year? Do you really believe that story? Because I don't.
abuse he was exposed to. So
yeah, whatever abuse he was exposed to, which the narrative that has come out of the United States is that he was given basically experimental medication to try to figure out if he was CIA or not. And they gave him this over and over and over. And it basically, they gave him this medication so often that it fried his brain. That's effectively what happened. Or that's like the leading narrative out right now.
Making statements like that it's beyond insensitive. It's just not what.
Why does she smirk when she says that? Yeah, it's beyond insensitive. Why is this funny to you? Like, this is such a serious, and I'm not trying to nitpick here. It's just when I compare the Young Turks in this video to all of their stuff about police brutality and that kind of stuff, or women's rights, I mean, she would be going apeshit crazy. She's actually one of the people who tries to be more serious. Like, the guys will often joke around a lot more, and Anna will be like super serious. So, but suddenly now that Otto Warmbier like died in a terrible fashion in North Korea, well, by the North Koreans, you know, and he's white, suddenly this is kind of funny to her.
Well advised, right? And keep in mind that this is a professor. This is someone who deals with students from all different types of backgrounds, and if she has this very clear bias against any group of students, I think it's problematic. So Katherine, this is according to a statement from the school. They said that Katherine Dettwyler, who last taught in the spring as an adjunct faculty member, will not be rehired to teach at the university in the future. They said that her
yeah, keep in mind, adjunct professor, like, she was a nobody at the school. Why would you stick up for someone who created such negative press for your school and was only there for such a short period of time? She was like hired in January or something like that. She wasn't there very long at all, so.
Statements do not reflect the beliefs of that university.
I disagree with the decision.
So, of course you disagree with the decision. Jesus Christ, this is when I was like, okay, this is gonna be gold. Time to shut it off.
First, let me say, saying that he got exactly what he deserved is way over the top.
No shit. So why do you disagree with the decision?
Deserves to die. No one.
Remember, the decision to get rid of her as a new faculty member, that went way over the top by a kid who was killed in North Korea. Well, by the North Koreans. He technically died in the United States. And then she made very insensitive comments right after on the national media.
He deserves to get 15 years of hard labor, which he was not. He didn't get to serve the full sentence, partly because he got so sick that he died.
Oh, he didn't get to serve his sentence. Are you fucking kidding me? He didn't get to serve it. Wow. Poor him, poor him not being able to serve 15 years hard labor for taking down a sign he actually put back up. The wording, it's just the wording with these guys. It's amazing, isn't it?
Died. And
then he uses the got sick and died narrative, which is literally the North Korean narrative.
And nobody deserves to get anything remotely similar to that for temporarily stealing a propaganda poster in North Korea. On the other hand, and I don't know.
Well, how is there another? He'll get into it, but what do you mean on the other hand? Like, you've just destroyed pretty much anything you could come up with. I mean, I honestly don't know where you can come. What you've already said is so bad that how are you gonna now say that she should be continually employed by that school? I don't get it, but I'm sure we'll have some mental gymnastics here.
What him being white has anything to do with this, right? So those are all the things she said that I don't agree with. On the other hand, saying that Otto Warmbier was misguided in going to North Korea is a very normal, rational thing to say. In politics,
Okay, that's not why people are outraged at all.
and insensitive to say right after he dies. Although, when else would you ever?
You don't judge with comments like these. You don't judge someone by like if there's a long statement and they make some comments that are extremely inflammatory and some comments that aren't. You don't say, well, these weren't, so the whole thing is fine. You say, well, these were inflammatory comments, and so this whole statement is inflammatory. You always judge by the inflammatory comments, not the non-inflammatory.
We're talking about Otto Warmbier. You wouldn't bring it up a year and a half later, but I don't think you should have gone to North Korea. And if you go to North Korea right now as a tourist, I think you're crazy.
But her statement wasn't.
They clearly don't know that he went to. Anyways, it seems that they clearly don't know he was actually staying in Hong Kong and just took a really like a short 5-day tour or something. And there could be many reasons for this. I mean, we don't know exactly what he's thinking, but there was something where he's connected to a church back in Ohio, and they were also guiding him. We don't know if he was potentially brainwashed or what, because he was misled. This church was apparently claiming to be like some secret university, and some like they claimed to have connections to the CIA or something like that. So
about how it was a bad idea for him to travel to North Korea, right? Her statement was more about, and I'm giving you what was implied. This isn't what she said exactly verbatim, but she was essentially saying, here's an entitled white guy going to another country thinking he can do whatever he wants to do and get away with it. Well, he gets what he deserves, right? That was
okay, that sounds pretty fucking bad, doesn't it? So I understand what Cenk said about, sometimes people complain about the timing, and you're not gonna, the timing is a little insensitive, but it kind of has to be, because you're gonna talk about it when it's fresh and when everybody's talking about the news. Like I talked about Otto Warmbier, now I was mainly defending him, but if the news cycle didn't work in the way that it does, I would prefer to have waited, but you have to talk about it right away, otherwise it gets stale, and you also don't want to bring it back up like a year later, you know what I mean, and then bring this all back up fresh for the family and stuff. So I get what he's saying, but and now I lost where I was going with that, so we'll continue.
Really the emphasis of what she was saying, and I think that that's not the right way to go.
Oh, but where I was going with that is, but what she said was still like terrible. Like you could still tone down your sentiments and be, less I'm grasping for a word here, but she could have toned her words down a little bit. So like she was so in your face about spoiled rich males. Like she was really attacking Otto in unnecessary ways.
About things, right? So for me, and then she goes on to rant about her white male students. And to me, that's
very problematic too, yes.
Problematic, right? And we would have...
Oh, she used the same word I did. Yeah, that's extremely problematic. It shows that she can't teach her students because we can't have trust that she's going to grade all students the same. And she clearly doesn't view her white students as the same as her non-white students.
We'd be very critical of a professor who said that about a group of black students, for instance, or a group of...
Holy shit! What am I hearing? Yes, you would be. Please apply this logic more.
group of Muslim students. You are an educator. You are not supposed to treat students differently based on race or religion and all that. So for me, the most problematic thing was not only the fact that she was incredible.
Honestly, this argument is, and I've noticed that they will bounce around a little bit from time to time, but this is more of a liberal argument and less of a progressive argument. But I'm not going to get too excited, because every time I've gotten excited in the past that they will be, more liberal and less progressive, they always go back to where they were, and they always, go full retard, basically. And you just set yourself up for disappointment if you think this is going to be any long-term change. But the argument she's making here is extremely sound.
Insensitive about someone who just died in a pretty tragic way, but the fact that she showed that she has a certain bias against certain students, and that shouldn't have any place in an educational setting. That's my issue with what she has to say.
So that's why I agree that I think it's a really...
Oh, that's okay. So I'm nitpicking here, but that's the issue you have to, like, the fact that, the other stuff about Otto wasn't the issue. I mean, come on. What she said about him was also a huge issue. I mean, that alone brought so much negative attention to the school that could have gotten her fired. But yes, it even became a bigger issue when she pointed it at her own students, which was actually like the entire meaning had nothing to do with Otto. That was just the vehicle she was using. She was looking for an opportunity to attack her white students that she feels acts spoiled.
Really close call, because the part that bothered me the most of that first sentence was "who come into my classes," meaning that she has some preconceived notion about some set of folks who come into their classes. She mentioned white, she mentioned male, and she mentioned rich. Even if she left it at rich, it still has some issues. So are you going to mark down rich kids or have some sort of bias against them?
Okay, so I mean, everything he's saying here, I can't even complain about. This is right on. Even if it's only the rich kids that you have an issue with, that is still like a really big bias that you're gonna mark down rich kids. And it's especially in the words that she used, but why would you then go and say that you disagree with the school getting rid of her? Cenk, come on, you're gonna have to make an argument for why you disagree with the decision by the school.
On the other hand,
here we go.
The point of academic freedom is that you allow people to have different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you kidding? Academic freedom? I mean, sure, we want people to be able to express ideas, and express, controversial opinions and things like that. That doesn't extend to a bias against our own fucking class. Like, we don't extend academic freedom literally to be a bias, potentially grading bias against groups of students in her class. This is the dumbest fucking argument I've heard in a long time. And what she said about Otto, I mean, it's not like anything she said here at all has any profound academic value. So, what's the profound academic value? That you shouldn't go to North Korea? I mean, that's basically all she said. If you go to North Korea and break laws, you're gonna face consequences. That doesn't have academic value. She's not making academic statements.
So now are we going to fire all the professors in the country who thought it was a bad idea to go to North Korea and that was an entitled, stupid thing to do? Now I feel, again, I'm not...
Oh my God, Cenk, are you fucking serious? Sure, we'll fire them all. In fact, we did fire them all because there was like one.
I'm saying of Otto because he's dead, but don't go to North Korea and think that it's a cool tourist trip because somebody from Vice went.
You know what really bothers me? Like, what does he know about Otto Warmbier? Like, what Otto could have been doing, something for research, or I remember when Christopher Hitchens went there and he was doing it for media, and maybe Otto was going to come back and write about it or something. We don't know what his intentions were. So, and you sure as hell know that Cenk didn't look into this. I don't even think the information is out there yet on what his motives were. I don't even think the United States knows what his motives were, to be honest. So, what the government know. When I say United States, I mean the government. I don't even think they know. So, for him to be making these statements about the intentions and actually the person of Otto Warmbier, it really doesn't make sense. He doesn't know. He's making shit up.
Okay, you're not Dennis Rodman.
Right.
It's a really, really stupid idea. Okay, it was a poster. Did he even know or think that he was stealing it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You might break some other minor infraction. You might have no infractions, but they think it'll help them politically to basically kidnap an American. It's not a free country. They have gulags and concentration camps. So don't flippantly go there. So it's not about Otto, it's about the next set of people. So if you're a professor raging about that, I don't blame you, I rage about it.
Yeah, I rage about that as well. I don't know if I rage about it, but I have openly said that I think it's a really bad idea.
I mean, okay, if you want to make the point that you shouldn't go to North Korea, and the government actually said, Americans should not go to North Korea. I know I've said that in the past. I even said that in one of my videos. Going to North Korea is not a good idea if you're an American, because stuff like this can happen. But that's not the main point. I mean, and how does and it's an obvious point. Like, it doesn't really even need to be said, to be honest. And I don't understand how Cenk can overlook everything that the professor said, and with all her racist comments and sexist comments, and then think that, and classist comments even, and then think that she should still be able to teach. It makes no sense.
To travel to countries like North Korea or some of the countries in the UAE, keeping it 100, right? I think that there are a lot of other great places to visit around the world, and you're better suited and safer in places that don't have human rights violations and things like that. But for me, she went above and beyond, and
You know what's amazing? They are always defending Muslims, because they're multiculturalists and they defend other cultures and stuff, but they are not defending the North Korean culture at all. Normally they encourage people to go elsewhere, and they're not encouraging anybody to go to and learn about the North Korean culture by going there. And it's technically not illegal to go to North Korea. So I mean, it's just really interesting, and this is where you start getting into like the oppression Olympics, where they've decided that Muslims are way up on the list, and blacks are high up there too. Latinos are relatively high up there. One race that is regularly not that high up there on the list that I've noticed is Asian. And there's this whole argument where like Asian is becoming half white because they actually do so well that when overall as a race Asians do really well. So when it comes to like affirmative action laws and stuff, they actually get discriminated against as much as whites, or if not even more a lot of times. A lot of times they're kept out of being able to get scholarships and education. They're held out of like especially math and like tech programs, and they face a lot of discrimination just like whites do. And It's based on their success. Groups get punished for success in the United States of today.
I would be concerned if I was like the chair of that department. She teaches anthropology, by the way. I would be.
And I was just gonna say, Asian is a race, so they view all Asians as pretty much the same. And so, learning about Asians, it's not as important as learning about, say, Muslims, which they, for some reason, view as a race.
Concerned about what type of biases are at play and whether or not it impacts the way that she treats certain students. That really did it for me. And more importantly, can we finally get to a place where we're civil, right?
And by the way, how she treated her students, there was a long history of teaching her students or treating her students badly. There were reports on her, where you can go and grade. It's like rate my professor or whatever. Students were saying don't take her class, and how they don't go to class. They do all of the work at home and learn from the book because they don't want to learn about or hear her like racist tirades, basically, and her very opinionated political ideology. Kids were fearing for their grades because they were conservative and they would just agree with her and tell her what she wanted to hear, so that their grades wouldn't be hurt. Like, this is a professor that should not have been teaching.
Where we actually understand that there are family members of this victim who are grieving right now, and you're talking openly on social media about how he got what he deserved. Just be a human being for once. That's another part of it that just drives me crazy. I mean,
exactly. Now, you could tell just by Cenk's like deep breath and how he's acting, like he's thinking about what he wants to say, because he's gonna now come up with something to counter her. He's gonna try to like half agree and smooth it over, but then actually disagree. So, what's Cenk gotta say? Because honestly, like, Anna says a lot of really stupid shit. What she's saying right now is right on par, and I'm not going to criticize someone or disagree with someone just because they have other stupid ideas. I mean, if you say, stuff that's on point, and you do this enough, I mean, I'll change my opinion about you.
We have gotten so toxic in society where we just say whatever we want to say without thinking about it.
I love that she said we've got so toxic in society. Like, she's talking about everybody in society as a whole. But from my perspective, yes, you guys have gotten extremely toxic in society. Like, I don't feel I'm toxic in society, and honestly, most of the people that I agree with and that agree with me, maybe they get a little toxic from time to time, but I don't think they're very toxic, to be honest.
About it. We're thinking about the ramifications.
Yeah, so you know what, let's do a poll on it, because we're split on it. I bet you a lot of you are split on it. I'm curious what you think. So let's do tycnetwork.com/5.
I bet the audience, even the Young Turks audience, well, especially, I guess it makes sense, but I don't even think the Young Turks audience would be split on this. I think that overwhelmingly they will be, take the side of Otto and take the side of firing this professor. And first of all, you have your hate watchers of the Young Turks, but second of all, like, even the progressives are human beings, and this just goes like over a line. I think that people don't really see that him as white. They see him as an American because he was killed in a foreign country. I know some people see him as white and as a white male, and that's all they see. But for the most part, I think a lot of people who would think like that, just because of the humanity and empathy of it, they see him more as an American. But maybe I'm naive, who knows.
Hired, and we'll put that up after the show. We'll have it in the link in the description box for you guys, where you can easily vote. I'm curious, do you think this professor should have been fired, or not. And good case, obviously, both ways. We don't want to prejudging the students in our classroom, but at the same time, there is academic freedom, and half of what she said was, in my opinion, perfectly reasonable. Membership helps fund the Young Turks. You know one great thing about that? That means we're not accountable to anyone but you guys. That's why we're strong together, because we built this show around you. Come build it even bigger and better at tytnetwork.com/join.
All right, I just casted my vote, and I can't believe that I just used a fake. I put testing@hotmail.com. Totally fake. Do you guys remember Hotmail? Totally fake email, and it went through. But so yeah, she should have been fired 2-1 basically. So. And there's over 1,700 votes. That's a lot. Like, Cenk, you're a fucking idiot. I'm not surprised that there's like 1 out of 3 voted no, because they do have a lot of regressives. But, I mean, it's still overwhelmingly, even in the Young Turks audience, which is, definitely regressive, it's still overwhelmingly in favor of firing this stupid professor, who, remember, has no seniority there. She's not even like a full-time professor there. So, anyways, have a good one, guys.